Welcome to the last part of the FEC TV Crime Special. Today we're looking again at capital punishment, and we're very lucky to be joined by James Rellis, who, after studying law here in Ireland, has qualified as an attorney in New York. James, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here. Glad to be on FEC TV.
Good stuff. Look, I'm going to cut straight into it. There was a recent newspaper story about Larry Murphy, who is a convicted rapist. Now, there's also very serious questions as to whether or not he may be a serial killer. This is a guy who he spent, I think, about 15 years in prison here in Ireland. In that time, in addition to, basically free accommodation, free food, he was also given an allowance. Now, he was last spotted in Amsterdam. Considering his track record, very serious and very legitimate questions have been asked as to whether or not he's going to do the exact same thing again, that it may just be a matter of time, and that maybe in a year's time or 2 years' time, we're going to be talking about him and looking at the next Larry Murphy trial. Now, why exactly, can you tell me, is it a bad thing to execute somebody like that?
Right, why is it a bad thing? Well, partly it's a problem with our justice system where it's too lenient. Like, the rules were set by the Irish government, by our legislation, saying that if before he committed his offence, these were the rules, he broke them, and we gave him the punishment. Now, yes, he probably got out a little bit too early. Possibly our rules are too lenient. If you look at America, where I've studied, where I'd be looking at with the death penalty in my studies, you see they have it much longer. You can do life there, where life is life. You do 75-year sentences, you do it. You don't get out early on good behaviour. Why would we not kill somebody like that? Well, if you look at America, you'll see that the states that have the highest amount of the states that have the death penalty also have the highest murder rate. So the problem there is that had we the death penalty, perhaps instead of just raping the poor victim, he would have killed her as well. So this is what I'm saying, where if you look at America, where 4 out of 5 of the highest states in America that have the death penalty, they have the highest murder rates. So there is a link between the murder rate and the capital punishment. That would be my view. I don't think it acts as an effective deterrent, nor does it take into account the possibility of innocent people being killed, which has happened. Innocent people have been executed, and they've since been proven innocent. Okay.
Well, looking at that whole question of the deterrent, because I mean the two big arguments in terms of the death penalty are the deterrent argument and also the moral argument. Now, you said that the states with the highest murder rates were also states with capital punishment.
Yeah.
We can't actually show that the presence of capital punishment is the reason that the murder rate is so high. I mean, it could very legitimately be argued that it's a case that they're not executing enough people, that maybe these are that let's say Texas, for example, is a very violent state, and that they actually need more use of capital punishment rather than less. And in terms of the question about innocent people being put to death, that's a very serious question and a very legitimate one. But the Innocence Project, which I understand you know a little bit about and that you've had colleagues work in, that's something that it's exonerated people, often through DNA evidence. And the fact that technology and science is advancing that way shows that maybe in the future the use of capital punishment will be fairer, that innocent people won't be put to death.
To come back to there, as you're saying, not enough people. If we're trying to kill more people, if we're trying to make it more effective, where, say, everyone on death row, they don't serve the same length of appeal process, or you're trying to get it done quicker, if that's what I'm understanding, well then, inevitably you'll have more innocent people being killed. Now, as I said, yes, one of my colleagues, Hilary Lennox, she has some articles out recently looking at the junk science on how people have been convicted wrongly, where one of them is the shaken baby syndrome. But also, if you look at the case of Todd Willingham, this guy 20 years ago was convicted of killing his 3 children by arson. And all the science subsequent shows that what the scientists and what the forensic experts now look at, they use different methods to determine how the fire would have started and how it would have spread, and whether it was whether it was malicious, like whether it was arson. And he's since been that he's since, all the evidence has since been proven null and void, but the man has been executed. This is the problem. Like, the system, our state, we have to place a greater onus on them. If we have, I know it's a bit of a chicken egg. You can't say, oh, because there's the death penalty, there's more murders. But there's a great link there where you see constantly that in 2008, the 20 states with the highest murder rate, all of them have the death penalty. If you look at Canada, they abolished the death penalty, and the murder rates dropped by 27%. New Jersey, they had a moratorium in 2009. The murder rate dropped after they had the moratorium. So I think, whilst you can't say it is the cause of the murders, there's definitely a link, 100%.
Okay, well, certainly a link is speculated. I wouldn't say there's a 100% link. How do you feel about the right of a society and a state to defend itself? Do you think that in all circumstances, there should never be any excuse, or it should never be accepted that the state defends itself with lethal force?
Oh, lethal force should be allowed when there's imminent harm of other people. As I said, like if you have a fleeing felon coming out of a bank robbery, and yeah, he has the shotgun, he's approaching a car and he's pointing at some civilian, telling them to get out, and there's a police officer there with a firearm. I don't think anybody would condone the officer for taking lethal or even semi-lethal action that would result in the person's death. Come on, like, the state has to protect the citizens, but that's in an imminent state. As we said, the deterrent effect isn't there because the states that have the death penalty, it's not acting as a deterrent because they have more murders than other states. So I think the state only has the right to defend itself and defend its people with lethal force when there's imminent danger. They can't do it when the man's in handcuffs in court, and I don't see the point in killing the person. It's revenge at the end of the day. It's not justice. It's just punishing the person for the crimes, but it doesn't bring about anything good. The victim doesn't come back, and I know the family. Interesting you say that, because the family back in 2009, the Supreme Court in Jersey asked the people to come in, and the victims' families, they just wanted an impact statement almost to see what they thought of the death penalty, and a lot of them, they couldn't make the call. They felt they were being asked to be rescuer and executioner at the same time, and the whole fact that innocent people could be killed, they decided they just couldn't make the call on whether the people that killed their family members should be executed. So it's interesting. Like, I don't think there's a clear-cut answer with this issue as such.
Maybe not. But do you see at all that, I know that you made the point about imminent danger, but do you see the principle as being any bit the same? That whether it's imminent or not, that killing a dangerous person, you know, if it's justifiable when he's running out of the bank with a gun, I mean, it's a case that the guy may just want to get away, that the gun isn't so that he shoots people, the gun is to scare people so that he can get away.
Yeah, but the problem there is where you're asking a police officer to make that call. Like, he's literally has seconds to make that call. And I think the balance has to rest with protecting the citizens. That's why I think it's allowed, because a police officer might only have a second or two to make the call, pull the trigger. They don't have years to decide and deliberate like in a death penalty case. So I don't think it's the same type of argument there. But I do see how the death penalty, you're trying to justify it by the fact that the state is allowed to defend itself in times of war, or, as I said, imminent danger. I think they should be able to, yes.
Yep, absolutely. Well, I mean, like, one of the interesting differences between the guy with the gun who's running out of the bank and the person who's being put to death is that the person who's being put to death on death row actually has killed somebody. The person who's running out of the bank with the gun, in all likelihood, hasn't killed anybody yet, and probably wouldn't. They might, but they probably wouldn't. Whereas the fact that somebody who is already murdered, they're more, I mean, they're shown to be a killer.
Or somebody who is in court charged with killing somebody, the person's already dead. I'm sorry, but the eggs have been smashed, the damage has been done, and it's very unfortunate, but killing this person won't bring the person back. The problem there is that in the bank scenario, killing the person might very well stop someone being killed.
So what you're saying to me in that case, James, is you would be in favour of a preemptive death penalty in that case? that maybe identify people who seem likely to be killers in the future. I mean, that's actually even more extreme than anything I would suggest. I mean, like I'm looking at things from the point of view of justice. And also there is retribution in there as well, and signalling to the rest of society. But I mean, the idea of, let's say, kill them in advance. But look, moving away from that.
Can you kill them in advance? What I'm saying there is that if someone's coming out of a bank and they're approaching a civilian with a shotgun, say, the police officer has to make the call. He's going to take that felon down, 100%. Like, he has to. It'd be remiss of him not to. Like, his duty is to defend society and defend civilians. I'm not saying we're going to use Minority Report, use a load of psychics and come in and find future criminals.
Well, I have to say I'm actually quite surprised by the extent of your right-wing feelings on this. But just going back to the Innocence Project, which we mentioned earlier on, I think one of the very interesting things about that is that if you can use, let's say, DNA evidence, which is the big thrust of it, if you can use the DNA evidence to prove somebody innocent, it actually makes convictions safer in the future if the same techniques are used. And that actually, I would say that legitimizes the death penalty further.
Yeah, but I can see your argument, but if you look at the science 20 years ago, they thought it was foolproof. As I said, the junk science regarding the arson, also with Shaken Baby, they thought this was clear cut. Who knows, in 20 years' time, DNA might be proven to be not as reliable. Now I know it's very reliable by all standards, and I do see your point, but this is somebody's life we're dealing with. That's the problem. If, like in the Todd Willingham case, if afterwards we can prove that they were innocent, there's no bringing back. There's no recourse. Now, like, people are exonerated quite frequently in America through the use of the Innocence Project. And what happens there is that, you know, they might spend 25 years in prison and then they're brought out, but at least they have their life back. Their family still has them back. They might get a final chance to see their partners, their sons, their mother. It's just not the same. Science could be proven wrong. Like some DNA, there could be errors. You have human error dealing with the DNA. There could be tampering of it. I just think with the death penalty, it's too severe of a sanction, looking at the chances that innocence could be harmed, because the deterrent effect clearly isn't there. So I think ultimately it comes down to innocence may be killed, and I don't think a state should be able to have that as collateral damage.
Well, James, a way that I look at this as well is that, let's say, if we can't trust the scientific evidence and we can't trust the DNA evidence, if we can't actually trust the convictions, you can still have a circumstance where somebody, they could be sentenced to life in prison, not executed, but life is life. Ultimately, they die in prison, and then after their death, they're proven to be innocent. Now, I mean, doesn't that undercut the whole thing? Doesn't that undercut your argument right there by saying that, well, you know, one way or another, we can't actually trust it. We can't trust the convictions at all. I mean, isn't it a truth that, you know, you either take a particular course or you don't? And one of the things that I think every society accepts is that, you know what, innocent people will go down. But the truth of the matter is the greater good is still going to be served. It may not be fair entirely, but it makes things stable.
Well, the law wouldn't entirely agree, where the law takes a stance that it'd rather 9 guilty people walk free than 1 innocent man being locked up. That's the old adage there. Now, I don't see it where you can say that society, through the court system, have it as like it's acceptable to kill. How many is it acceptable to kill? 2 people a year, 5 people a year, 10 people a year? If we're keeping down these murders, I just don't see it as in a civilized countries like nowadays. In the first world countries, we shouldn't be allowing the death penalty.
Okay, well, James, I think you made some very interesting points there, and it's very much appreciated. And also, I'd certainly wish you the best in terms of defending the innocent and the guilty in New York.
Thank you very much. Thank you, FEC TV.
Thank you. Tune in to FECTV.com.